So I'm going to talk a bit about why I think the serverless mobile apps are the future. And I'm really happy that Bruno gave his talk right now, because I'm going to talk basically something totally opposite than he just did. I hope you don't mind. So I want to start from saying a little bit about the app development, about how it looked in the past, like what changed since then. So at the beginning, with a year 2008, the iOS and the Android development basically like exploded with the marketplace, with Google Play now and the App Store on the iOS, and it kind of changed the way we worked, because we could just make our apps and distribute them really easily. And then the cloud buzzword came in, like everything is in the cloud, like the local storage is not wanted anymore, really. And I'm gonna finish about saying why I think the serverless apps are the future and what actually means for the app to be serverless. So I want to start with a short intro of myself. My name is Mariusz, and I work at Syncano. And how I became an iOS developer. So actually, I didn't know anything about like the mobile development, what it actually is, until my last year at university. And then I came to an opportunity to create a mobile app for my master thesis, and I chose to develop for Android platform. Unfortunately, someone took the project before I could, so I was stuck with iOS. And now actually I'm happy he did that, because if you saw the LOL life cycle, I think it's much simpler on iOS. So how it looked at the beginning, if you compare it with how it looks now, you basically had to develop a lot of things that you don't have to take care of now. Like let's think about like the handling all the touches of users. Like you had to at the beginning know where the user touched, and you had to be responsible to know if it was actually like a tap, a double tap, a pinch, or a drag. And now it's much easier. With UI, you had to do a lot of UI coding, which is now more simplified. You had to deal with like changing the sizes of views and rotations. I think every iOS developer who started a few years back knows the method like layout subviews or draw rect, which you don't have to go back as often now. And back then, the server wasn't actually needed, as long as you were able to save the state of an application, and user could launch it later on the same phone. It was actually fine. He didn't mind. He didn't want to go to his iPad or his Mac. If you were able to start from when he ended, when he worked with your app previously, it was fine. So what changed? How it looks now? The tools we have now, like the IDs, help you a lot. You don't need to code so much. A lot of the stuff you do is just like drag and drop and connecting pieces all together. You don't have a lot of issues with different sizes of devices. Like I remember at the beginning, if I wanted to use an app as a user, I basically had to buy it twice from the App Store, one for iPhone, one for iPad. Now it's not really that common. There's a lot of frameworks that help you with developing of your apps. Lots of them are part of the operating system. Lots of them are developed by like independent developers. If you're developing for the iOS, think like IF networking or Magic Records, which help you a lot. And what's also changed is now you have to take care of something you didn't have to take care before, because your users right now work online. They have more than only one device. And what Bruno showed, you actually have some data you want to persist somewhere else than only on your device. So what actually your app needs to be able to handle these kind of problems for users. First thing is the sign up and login, right? So you need to be able to know your users and differentiate them. You need to know which pieces of data belong to who. And even if it's hidden from your application users, like let's think of WhatsApp or Viber, where you just provide the phone number, you get a text with the password. It's still somewhere there. There's still a sign up and a login. You need to think about about backing up your data. So if something happens with your device, if you do a clean install, if you install your app on a second device, you still need to be able to get that data back. A lot of users now work on more than only one device. They have phones, they have tablets. There are even the same apps working on computers, on PCs, on Macs. People also want to share their work with others. So it's not only one person working on their drawings. They want to finish their work, that they want to share it then with others. And also people want to work together on their project. So the difference between the last one and the previous one is, think of it like a difference between sharing a PDF of your work on Dropbox and working on a document on Google Docs together with someone. So what do you need as a developer to make these requirements possible to accomplish? Look, the first one is the server, obviously. If you want to store your data somewhere, if you want to log in your users, and if you want them to work between different sets of devices, you need to have a server, right? And the server needs to implement the user authentication, data storage, business logic, and integration with services like, for example, sending mails or push notifications. So what is possible solution to that problem? Well, basically what Bruno said is you become a full stack developer. So you are now able to develop both your front-end, your mobile app, and your backend. You are able to set up your own server. You are able to maintain it. You are able to take care of scaling, of load balancing, of security. You know how to make a proper API and implement it later, which is fine, but I would ask, why would you have to do that? So when it comes to me, when I start building a server and I see like the console on AWS, my head just explodes. Like, there are so many pieces, and I have no idea which piece I have to use. And I tried it a few times. I mean, you can take Flask, you can take Django, whatever, Express and Node, and you can set up your own server. And I am able to do that, and I think we are all here. We can learn new stuff. But to be honest, the fact that I can do it, it doesn't mean I should, because I still basically have no idea what I'm doing. So what's the other solution? The other solution is serverless. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean that there is no server. You still need to save your data somewhere. You still need to authenticate your users. You still need to have like a database of users, and they need to be stored somewhere. But what it means is that you have one generic backend that is not app-specific. And what it means is that this server is not actually a part of your application, which makes it also easier to test and easier for development. Right? So we saw all the components before, what needs to be implemented on the server. So let's take a look at which pieces of the server actually need to be built custom for your application. So you start with user authentication. There are many methods. There is like the basic auth. There is OAuth. You can use Facebook or Twitter or Google. So they are not really custom. It's always the same thing. You always pass like the login and password. You always pass token from Facebook or Google. So this basically can be built without knowing like the specifics of your application. Second is data storage. So it is somehow specific to your application, especially when it comes to like a schema of your data, what actually you want to hold. But like on the higher level, what you need is basically you need to send something to your server. You need to be able to get that back, filter this data or sort this data, but you actually don't need to build like the whole setting up of database and hosting it somewhere. It's not specific to your application. The services like sending mails or push notifications, of course the content of your messages will be different depending of your app or the timing when they are being sent based on which events. But like the core thing working underneath, like how do you send your mails, how do you send your push notifications, it's always the same. It always works the same regardless of what your app is doing. And the business logic, this actually is something that is custom to your application. So what I recommend is to just put all that code on the mobile. And by the business logic here, I mean like the flow of your application, which screens go to which screens, what triggers, what user action triggers, what action on the server. Like let's say if user buys something, send them an email and stuff like that. So what does it mean if you have no custom backend? It's much easier to do like the local development because you don't need to set up your local environment. You don't need to wait for any backend to be created for you. You don't need to wait for the APIs being created for you. You can just start developing right away. And what it also means is the rapid prototyping. So basically when you start with a new project, you can just start developing, you can start sending the data, you can start authenticating your users, and you don't need to actually wait for anything to be done for you before you can go into developing your application. So I want to show you a few companies that somehow abstract the server management, and is this really the serverless? Well, it abstracts like it abstracts all the layers. You don't actually own the physical server anymore. You are not responsible for like all the wiring, for the providing internet and the cooling. But in my opinion, it's not really serverless. So what does it actually mean to be serverless? One, which the previous products do, they help you not run and maintain your server. But what serverless also means is that the vast majority of your code is on the front end or on the mobile. It's not the code you write, it's not responsible for the scaling, load balancing, for the security, for authenticating your users, for setting up the database, for doing like the data migrations and schema migrations if you change anything. I think in this case, in most cases, 95% of your code of your application should reside on the mobile or on the front end. And only the code that really must reside in the cloud, that's the only code that should. And an example of it is if you have to deal with something related to like a security, if you have like secrets, some tokens, some API keys, if you're doing like the payment, and the payment needs to be confirmed somewhere on the server, not inside your application, only that type of code should be on the server. And then your app is basically like orchestrating everything. Your app is a decision taker, saying if user went to some point in your application, what happens then, and it connects to the API on the server and decides what to do next. So a few examples of services that could help you in different areas. Like for the payments, it can be Braintree or Stripe. You don't need to implement your own credit card processing. Sending mails, you can use Mailchimp, SendGrid. For the user authentication, there's Stormpath or Auth0. And for data management, you can use Mongo or Couch. And there are many other areas in where this really helps you. But it's much simpler to go serverless than to go back into the console of AWS and try to set it all up from the scratch. So there is an interesting idea on a website called NoBackend.org. I encourage you to go there afterwards. They introduced something that's that they call is a dream code. It's basically a code that we all dream of writing, that it simplifies everything. And this is like the goal, where we should go when developing our apps. So when you want to sign up your user, that should be everything you should add into your application. You just write sign up, you pass the username and password, and that's it. And you don't worry where it goes. You don't have to worry how it works, if this is safe, if this is unsafe, if it stores them in, I don't know, in Postgres, if it stores them in MySQL the database. That's all you should care of. Or if you want to save some item, you define the object and you save it, and that's all. Why would you be interested if there was used a post method, a put method, a patch method on the REST API, if it's being passed as JSON or as an XML? Your users don't care about it. Why should you, right? Or if you want to send an email, you just have to define who receives the email, what's the content of it, and you just perform the method and the mail is sent, and that's all you should know. So what's the state of the serverless apps right now? So there are multiple platforms that provide that. I'm sure I didn't even list half of them here. There's lots of services, and they are different between each other in many different ways. Some of them help you with data storage. Some of them help you with payment processing. Some of them help you with sending mails. Some of them help you with the real-time sync. Some of them try to combine it all together to make it like simpler for you, so there's only one place you have to go to when you develop your app. But what's different here is they change your approach to the app development. They try to make you think about your app first, not about your backend first. And I think this is something that's really crucial, and I think this is something that's really important for us mobile developers, because I believe that as mobile developer, I should put a mobile app first, not the backend first. I shouldn't be limited by the backend, but only by what my users want. So there is one interesting sentence said by Alan Key, that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So I am personally happy to be the part of the serverless movement, because being an iOS developer for a few years and seeing how it all changes, how it goes from like being responsible to code everything, to abstracting some of the things by your IDE, to abstracting some things by the frameworks you use, by services like AWS, by Google Engine, by Heroku, where they also help you abstract like the physical layer of your servers. I can see how it's being changed right now, that you won't even have to know about what machines are you using, how many machines are there. And I think it's really exciting for all of us to be at this point, because I truly believe that the serverless is something that will change the way we develop our apps. So one thing I'd like you all to like take from my presentation is next time you start developing your next application, start with the mobile first. Start thinking about what your users need, about how will you show it to them, not from the backend, because the backend is something that your users don't care, and I think it's something you shouldn't care about too. So thank you. If you wanna send me a message, you can find me on Twitter, and if you wanna visit our website, you can find it here. And if you have any questions now, I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you about possible risk of the more complicated deployment or migration. For example, if you have one application like developed in a serverless way, already deployed, and already a lot of users that are using it, but we like to add a new feature which breaks some compatibility with the previous, for example, database scheme. how to handle that if we don't have this business logic implemented on the backend, but on the mobile side. You know that it's like almost impossible to like deploy, like upgrade all the clients at once. Yeah, it's not possible. So how to do that with this serverless architecture?
But is there like a difference if the app is serverless or if you build your own database in this case?
I mean, I know how to handle the case if we own the backend and if the business logic is on the backend side. So we can just prepare the migration to the backend and handle support for different versions of the clients. Yeah. But if we implement the client and if there is the business logic in the client.
Yeah, the business logic is on the client, and the client doesn't know about the change that happened on the backend because it's the old version still.
Okay, so
yeah. So in this case, in this case, that's gonna be a problem. So I think for the most cases, in here, the serverless platform you choose, it should handle that for you, like the data by migration. So if you like change your schema, you add a new column, you remove a column, your data should still like be persisted. So it's available for the previous versions, or you should be able to make like different versions of your data schema. The same way when you change your API and you still have the old one, like the legacy one for the old clients, old customers, so they don't need to change anything. But then if you make a new version, you upgrade the new versions of your apps to use somehow like the new API, new data schema, and the old ones can still work with the old ones. And I don't think there is a platform right now that could help you do that. But I think in general this is something we should be aiming for, because if you have to worry about it, you may just as well go back to making your own database.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd like to. I have this for example when you have the version first of your app, and you present the full name of the list of the users, the full name. And with version 2 you have this, you have this crazy idea to bold the surname of the user. So in version 2 you add these fields, first name and last name, but you have this compatibility not affected at all the versions look the same, but we want the old data to migrate to this new columns. Even if you want to split them by one character or something like that, you can do it in like normal backend, because in the migration you can just fetch all the users split by the white space and fulfill the first name and last name. And what about this kind of migrations on this mobile backend?
Yeah. So as you said, if you have like in the first version you have the first name and last name, they are combined into one field. So of course in the second one, when you add the new fields, first name and last name, you should still leave the full name in case like the old applications are using it.
But if like me, like the first name A, the full name A space B guy will not upgrade to the V2 version of my app, the others will not see me in this V2 version of the app. So I don't know if you know what I mean, but the capabilities of the regular APIs are much more when it comes to data migration.
Yeah, so I think this actually can be figured out, because I know the services here who can also handle like a trigger-based behavior. So for example, if you switch to like the new version of your schema when you have like the first name and last name being separate fields, and from the new applications you send only those two fields, you don't have to worry about the full name, because you can make like a trigger whenever there's a change in first name or in the last name, also update the full name. and then it becomes still compatible with the first version of your application, and you don't have to have that logic in your app. I don't know if it makes sense about what I said, that the business logic shouldn't be on your server, but this, I think, is not the business logic, but this is more like the migration logic. Yeah.
So where the migration logic is?
The migration logic should be on the server, because
there is a serverless thing.
yeah. As I said, the serverless, it doesn't mean there is no server. It's just a server you don't have to maintain, a server you don't have to code, and the server you don't have to think about most of the time. Yeah.
So something that I found is that I guess programmer comfort on which side goes is not as important as generally where can you sacrifice on performance, or where can you get the most performance so you can get the best user experience, right? And a lot of things just generally land better on the backend, where you can have a database and you can do some SQL logic to handle like shrinking up a data size into smaller chunks and then handing it to a database. And second, also a lot of the times when you're programming and trying to get a feature fast, a lot of the duplication of the logic goes into the backend, because then your mobile iOS, mobile Android, mobile Windows, and multiple JavaScript clients can also use that logic without having to code them into all of them. Because if you put this business logic into the client itself, now you have to repeat it into a bunch of different places.
Yeah, sure. So there are of course cases where it doesn't make sense, because if you have to duplicate your code, it makes it harder to maintain, it makes it harder to update, especially when you make new versions of your product and then the logic changes. So there are definitely cases when it makes sense to put the logic on the backend, but still I think even if you take that under consideration, still 99% of your code would be on the mobile or would be on the front end, whether it's Java or Objective-C, Swift or JavaScript. And I think what you talked about, the comfort zone, that it doesn't matter for developers, I think it actually does, and this is also why we moved away somehow from building your own physical servers and having your own server farms. We are moving to the Amazon, for example, AWS, right now, and I think it's only the matter of changing the way you think, that you are willing to abstract much more than you were willing to abstract a few years back. Because if you talk to people 10, 15 years ago, if they will be willing to use a server, they will share with other people they don't even know. And then you are not even sure how much resources on the server you will have, and that the platform doesn't even provide you a promise that it will be up for some level of time like it is on AWS. I don't know if you would be willing to do so, but now people actually feel comfortable with doing that, because it speeds up the process of development.
I mean, what happens with a lot of those services is that they have developed to the point that they have been commoditized, right? Like a server with specific specs or a database configured with such memory, and if you can guarantee me that I have enough throughput through it,
yeah.
I don't really care how you set it up, right? But do you think that we can do the same thing with backends, basically, have the backend commoditized to the point that you can just put a little bit of logic and say, you know what, the rest of it I'm just going to handle it on my application logic on the mobile app, because databases and server resources have been done that to a large amount.
Yeah, I think so, and that's why I also think the serverless, it will go in a way where you have to somehow specialize in a different way. So if you think that one of the platforms they do the database the best, you should probably just stick with them and then process the payments on Stripe and not with the service with database that process the payments just poorly. And then they will probably handle all your migrations the best, because they do the database the best, and everything that you actually need there.
With the serverless approach, you also lose a lot of agility. Like if you want to change your business logic, you need to update the app, wait for the app review on iOS. If you have an error in your logic, you need to wait a week with all the users suffering the error. And even then you don't know that all the users will update the app, so you still stay on the old business logic.
Yeah, that is true, but I don't, to be honest, think that this is a huge issue, because if users actually aren't updating your app, first is the question: are they really active users of your app? Sometimes they cannot update because there are some because they have like the old version of the operating system, and they will never be able to upgrade even if they use it. But I think this is still something that we developers should handle on our side, that you make your app in a way that is friendly to your users. And then if there is like we talked about putting the code in a shared space for the mobile, for the web, for computers somewhere on the server, I think you should do that. But still, again, lots of these platforms I showed, they allow you to do that. Some of them let you define your own code and write it in different languages, Python, JS. Some of them let you do like a drag and drop. If this happens, do this and return this. And this is also somehow part of the business logic being stored on the server, but still in a serverless mind of thinking, where you don't actually have to think how it works, how the database was set up, how the user authentication works, what's the database underneath. It still focuses on the mobile, on the front end first, and not on the backend itself.
But that's also achieved by having a backend developer.
Yeah, true. So I think it's really easy if you work in a company and you have a team, and then you are a mobile developer and you also don't have to think about the backend. It's just something that someone gives you and it's there. It's ready. But the drawback of that is that you have to wait for the other guy to make it. You cannot start prototyping right away. And when there's something that doesn't work, he needs to fix it for you. And then when you start making another app, you start from the scratch. And what he did for the previous app, it basically goes to trash, and you start the whole process all over again.
So for the record on that end, we usually as a company, we mock a lot of the backend services that we need to do. So generally we will have the ticket for backend and the front end together, and the backend developer will work with the front end developer, or we will have somebody who's full stack do it. But a lot of the times when it's something that we don't know, it's high risk, like the front end has to do it, we will just have mock responses from the backend. So they are not like fully server process responses, but we will know what we will be getting or we will expect to get from the backend, so the people in the front end can be working on it while the backend is developing the backend side to the specifications they already have.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good approach, but what I find from my experience, why it's not always the best practice, is because you can mock basically everything, right? And when it comes to testing, it's really hard to do so, because your mocks are always perfect. They always return you the data that you ask them for, and they never fail, which is not true in case of the backend, because you can mock something in one way, and then when you add the actual server, it may happen that it works differently, and you didn't test it properly. You didn't think that, okay, so for this input, the output actually is different than what I assumed it would be. And if you work with a backend developer, the approach you should show, I think, is the best, because you cannot just sit and do nothing until the server is made. So you basically have to mock it, but it would be much easier and faster if you could start working with the actual server right away.
Don't you think that most of the backend work goes still to the front end developers? Just because, like, nowadays, the web frameworks don't really care also about the databases, about the load balancers and this stuff. It's all clickable, so you just write the business logic. fast. So it's like I don't think that there is much difference between me myself doing the backend in Ruby on Rails and the front end in iOS app than writing the iOS code with the backend in mind that I have to save something and I have to like postpone this push notification to go to this user and like okay, there's like more than one programming language to know about, but the work is pretty much the same.
So
you have this ability with iOS to deploy continuously while waiting 2 weeks for the answer to review the new version of the app.
So I think in this case, the main difference is basically in our heads, in how we think about the app development in general. Because if you are making your own server, if you are writing like if you use the Ruby on Rails or use Express and Node, it doesn't really matter. But then you have to take away your thinking from what your app will be doing, from how your users will use your app, to how it actually works, where it sends the data, how it connects with it. And then you are kind of are limited by what are the possibilities there. And when you start thinking about developing your app from the backend side, I just think personally it's the wrong approach, because you should start with your users on your mind first. And they don't really care that if you click this button, it goes to Amazon, or it goes to Heroku, or it goes to your own platform. They only care that if you press this button, they see a pop-up or they buy something. And still the time you have to put into writing your own backend, even if you know how to do it, this time could be just spent on developing your own app, not your backend. Okay, then thank you again.